Hour number 2 of this fine radio program. I am your chaplain of cheer, your pharaoh of free markets, your lauder of limited government, and the grand potentate of Party Town. My name is Jeff Angelo. Thanks very much for joining me. So President Trump was making news over the weekend by commenting both on Twitter and in interviews with Fox that he was thinking of ending the daily White House press briefings. And that's led to a larger discussion of the hostility of the media toward this administration, and are there ways to communicate directly to the American people without having going through a media that some in the administration are viewing as the opposition currently. So is this a good idea, given our modern media, that President Trump goes around the White House press corps? Let's talk to a crisis communications expert. It's Chrysta Castañeda, and Chrysta is back on the WHO Newsmakers line. Chrysta, welcome back to WHO in Des Moines. How are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
So what do you think about this, Chrysta? I go back and forth because, you know, on one hand, people celebrate President Trump for giving as good as he gets. I'm gonna get after you, you get after me. On the other hand, there is all this alternate media available to an administration. So what do you think about what President Trump was saying over the weekend about not communicating with the White House press corps anymore?
Well, I think the administration has got to get some control over its communications, and ideally that would mean that President Trump would consider the views of everybody who's going to have to speak to the press about what to say to the press and get on the same page, have a plan, execute it, and not trip over each other. That would be the ideal scenario. He suggested that if he didn't do that, that he might just put out, a written question and answer.
Yeah.
That might have some advantages over the current, state of chaos. But in the end, he's going to have to still talk to the media, because the media is going to write regardless of whether they talk to him or they have access to him or not. So, get the message out there is his best strategy, and I don't personally think it can be done with 140-character tweets.
Well, and Chrysta, you are hitting on a theme that I actually brought up on Friday. I so appreciate that, because I was saying to folks, look, I know that President Trump's fans love him because he's off the cuff when he does interviews. But the problem with off the cuff is that his communications team's message and his message may conflict with each other. And the example that I gave is, if you were a quarterback on a football team and you were quarterback Trump, and you called a play, and your team said break, and they went to the line, and you started running the play, but then the quarterback decided to run his own play, that would be chaos. And that's what you were describing. You've got to have a unified message. And I would say part of that would be because your opponents have a unified message, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, to me, it feels a little bit like Sandlot football. Everybody go long, and let's hope somebody can catch the ball.
Yeah.
And it's just not working. As an example, the Senate has to work on health care right now, and all of this chaos in the media is just detracting from their ability to position health care the way that, the Republicans would like to position it in order to get it through Congress and get a bill passed. And that's just one example. This chaos detracts from the forward movement of, whatever progress it is that he's trying to make.
One thing that made me smile over the weekend, Chrysta, was when President Trump was talking about this to Fox, he brought up the ratings for Spicer's press briefing, because he's a TV guy and he's into ratings. So he knows that Spicer's news conferences every day they're better watched than the soap operas are. But I don't think, Chrysta, that people are watching them for all the right reasons, right? Like, I love your word chaos. I think that's what we're looking for here. It's like watching a hockey game waiting for the fight.
It's the ultimate in reality TV, right? Let's give President Trump this. He loves being front and center.
Yeah.
And he is succeeding at that every single day in every single publication. He's succeeding hugely on that.
Yeah, absolutely right. So let me broaden this out, Chrysta. Lessons that we can learn. Let's say you're working with a company, you're working with a small business. As you said, you want to control the message. Does that mean limiting yourself to the types of media that you would use? Or are you saying use all media, but make sure you stay on message? What's your advice to clients?
Well, certainly more of the latter. I mean, first of all, you got to know what it is you're trying to do. So you got to have a plan. Second, you got to have people who can execute the plan, who are informed about the plan, as you said. You can't just, call a play and then run a different one when you get to the line. You got to have those people being effective, and you've got to provide the information to the media outlets who are going to write regardless. You're not going to avoid adverse media. Your best idea is to try to put the information out that if you're dealing with, a journalistic, ethical publication is going to write your side of the story as well, or at least acknowledge that your facts are there. So that's your best hope, and that's really the only way to succeed in moving along your agenda through a communications plan.
So I know that politics-wise, the latest polling, Chrysta, shows that most of Trump's supporters have stuck with him through all of the controversies. 98% of Trump voters said that they'd vote for him again. So we know Trump, and we know what he does, and so a lot of voters are not turned off by the things that he does. But do you think ultimately there is a negative impact for Trump and the administration in saying we are not going to face the White House press corps? For example, I was listening to Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity said, look, you could just put a YouTube video out every day with a controlled message. Now, that meets your requirement for a controlled message, but you're not taking questions. Does ultimately that not look good for the president and the administration?
I think it's better for the administration to have the appearance of being open. I mean, that's what his fans love about him, is that he appears to be just a regular guy saying what's on his mind. If it starts to lock things down and not provide access except through tweets or video, then I think he detracts from that. And let's remember that 98% of his voters, I mean, that 2% made a huge difference in this last election.
Yeah.
So even if his goal is just simply to get reelected, above and beyond actually doing something, then that's probably not the best strategy anyway. We got a long way to run on the 4 years that he's got, and I just don't think that this is the most effective strategy for achieving really probably anything that he wants to achieve.
What do you think of the new avenues of communication, Chrysta? What avenue of communication are you most impressed with? Obviously, he's the president of the United States, and when he tweets, as he does quite often, that's going to lead the news. I was just wondering, for ordinary folks like you and me that are small business people and want to get our message out, what do you think are some of the changes you've seen in the communications area over the past few years that you've been most impressed with?
Well, it's always a challenge for small businesses. So if we're stepping away from politics and we're just talking about small businesses using social media, the answers to how best to use it are as varied as the types of businesses there are. If you're a service provider like me, corporate communications, I can develop a Twitter following, I can develop a Facebook page following, and I can put a message out there, but it's not the same thing as tweeting about the news or even making the news the way Trump is. And it's different if you manufacture some kind of product, if you're selling consumer goods. I mean, it really takes a specialized plan to know which is the most effective, and don't waste your time on the things that aren't effective for your particular segment.
And I did want to ask you, because you also have an expertise in the area of crisis communication, and that's quite frankly why we're watching Sean Spicer in the afternoons here in Iowa, because we think that something is going to get under his skin. Something is going to cause him to heat up a little bit. Is that a trait that you try to talk to your clients about, which is if you're going to go out and let's say the media is going to be hostile to you or they're going to ask tough questions, the worst thing it seems to me you can do is lose your composure?
Yes, and you ought to be able to prepare for everything that they're going to say. I mean, these aren't really unique questions, and somebody in your organization, if you're a business, is going to have a perspective on what kind of questions are people going to ask about whatever it is that we're doing. You know, if the voice of the organization is prepared for those questions, it's a lot harder to get riled. It just seems to me like it's an ineffective strategy, again, in moving towards whatever the mission is, to have your spokespeople be, you know, really the story. That shouldn't be.
Yeah, I gotcha. But I do have a final question for you, because I do feel sympathetic, though, sometimes to Sean Spicer with some of the questions he gets, because, for example, last week at one of his press briefings, he was asked, is the president out of control? That was the question. So, like, how do you deal with that? Do you just kind of smile and blow it off, or go, I don't even know? Do you throw it back at the questioner? What do you do when you get like a crazy question like that?
Well, I'll tell you how I would answer it. I'd have a statement that says he is laser focused on his mission and the mission of moving forward X, you know, whatever
Right.
that X is. And that's the way you answer those questions. You know, sometimes the broader and you know, more inflammatory are really the easiest to bat away. It's when somebody's asking a very specific fact question and they've got the facts and you don't have a good response. That's when you get tripped up. But that's not where we're dealing with right now. He's missing the easy softballs, in my opinion.
That is such good perspective. That's crisis communications expert Chrysta Castañeda. Chrysta, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm already getting texts on this topic.